Billionaire CEO laughed in front of 200 people. She humiliated the janitor and said, "Fix this $2 million engine that MIT engineers couldn't, and I'll marry you right here." The entire company watched him fail for 6 long weeks. But what happened in the next 2 hours shocked Silicon Valley, investors from Germany, even the CEO herself. This wasn't just an engine repair. This was a moment that changed history. In the gleaming headquarters of Crimson Motors, where glass walls reflected power and success, Jamal Washington blended into the background like a shadow. To everyone else, he was just the janitor, the quiet man who emptied trash cans, polished marble floors, and moved silently through hallways buzzing with billion-dollar dreams. But Jamal was far more than a uniform and a mop. Before life pulled him down a different road, he had been the boy who dismantled broken radios just to rebuild them better. The teenager who fixed neighbors' cars for free. The young man who once dreamed of designing engines that changed the world. Life, however, had been unkind. Bills, loss, and limited opportunity had trapped him in a role no one believed he could ever outgrow. And yet, while MIT and Harvard-trained engineers crowded around the massive prototype engine in the testing bay, arguing over data charts and digital readouts, Jamal listened. He didn't listen with machines, he listened the way his grandfather had taught him. With patience, with instinct, with heart. He placed his hand lightly against the metal casing and felt the uneven tremble. He tilted his head as the engine coughed and shook, sensing its pain like a doctor reading a fever. It's not broken, it's misunderstood. Inside that rumbling chaos, he heard a rhythm. A heartbeat off by just a fraction. A whisper hidden beneath the roar that every expert in the room had somehow missed. His mind traced pathways, imagined connections, reworked circuits, and timing in silent, brilliant calculations. But Jamal knew a hard truth that TO them. He wasn't an engineer, he wasn't a genius. He wasn't even worth noticing, he was just the janitor standing in the corner. His lips parted slightly, as if he might speak, then closed again. What would they say if he tried? Laughter? Dismissal? Another reminder of where he belonged? Still, the answer echoed louder in his mind with every shaking second of that engine. The question was no longer could he fix it. It was would anyone actually listen to him? The conference room at Crimson Motors had never been so full. Top investors sat in the front row, dressed in sharp suits and quiet power. Engineers stood along the walls, arms folded, ties loosened, eyes heavy with frustration. At the center of the room, the massive prototype engine sat on its steel platform like a beast no one could tame. It had failed every test, burned through millions of dollars, crushed timelines, humiliated a team of the best minds in modern engineering. And still, it refused to where you and the head of the room stood Alexandra Reed, the fearless and famously ruthless CEO of Crimson Motors. She was brilliant, untouchable, admired and feared in equal measure. Her reputation was built on perfection, and failure was not a language she spoke. Another 48 hours lost, she snapped, pacing in sharp heels. And still nothing. If no one in this room can solve the issue, perhaps Crimson Motors has outgrown its engineers. A tense silence followed. That was when a soft, unfamiliar voice rose from the back of the room. I think the problem is not software, it's harmonic frequency. Every head turned at once. Standing near the doorway, still holding a cleaning cart, was Jamal Washington. A few people blinked, confused. Someone near the front actually chuckled. The janitor, an engineer, whispered, not even trying to hide the disbelief. Alexandra slowly turned around. Her sharp eyes narrowed as they locked onto him for the first time. Not as background, but as an interruption. "What did you just say?" she asked. Jamal swallowed. Every heartbeat thundered in his ears. For a second, fear clawed at his throat. But behind that fear was another voice, deeper, warmer, steady. "Listen to the engine, boy. Machines talk to those who respect them." "It isn't a coding issue," Jamal repeated, his voice stronger now. "The engine's internal frequency is colliding with the mounting frame. That tiny conflict is throwing the whole system off. You don't need more software. You need a different harmonic balance." A long pause stretched through the room. Then laughter broke out. Quiet first, then louder. Smiles, shaking heads. Even two investors shared a glance of amused disbelief. Alexandra stared at him like he was a puzzle she never asked to solve. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that while my senior engineers and outside consultants failed for weeks, our janitor has figured it out by listening?" "Yes, ma'am." The room fell silent again, not amused this time, but curious. Cameras began to shift. A media team, already present for an internal promotional documentary, quietly turned their lenses toward him. The red light blinked on. Live. Alexandra tilted her head, eyes sharp with something between irritation and intrigue. "You realize the absurdity of what you're implying, don't you?" she said coolly. "If I let you touch this machine and you're wrong, the embarrassment won't just be yours, it will be mine, and it will be Crimson Motors." Jamal nodded once. "I understand. And yet you still want the chance?" "I don't want a chance," he replied. "I want the truth to speak for itself." Another murmur rippled through the crowd. Alexandra turned to the investors, then back to Jamal. A faint, almost dangerous smile curved her lips, the kind she reserved for high-stakes gambles. "Fine," she said, raising her voice so the whole room could hear. "You want a chance? You'll have 2 hours." She gestured toward the engine. "One engine. One problem. One audience. Fix it, or you're banned from this building permanently. No second chances. No sympathy." She paused, then added, the words biting with sharp humor. "And just for some added incentive, if you actually succeed, I just might marry you." Laughter exploded across the room. Some people clapped. Others pulled out phones. The challenge had suddenly turned into a show, a joke, a spectacle, entertainment. But Jamal didn't laugh. He simply stepped forward, past the men in suits, past the women whispering, past the engineers who had ignored him for months. He walked straight up to the engine, placed his hand on the cool steel, and closed his eyes. The room disappeared, and cameras, and OCE, and mocking voices. Just him and the heartbeat of the machine. And in his mind, he could almost hear his grandfather beside him, gentle and strong. "Now, son, let's show them what it's been trying to say all along." What started as a moment of humiliation had just become a battlefield for destiny, and Jamal Washington had stepped onto it with nothing but knowledge, courage, and a truth the world was about to witness. The massive test bay at Crimson Motors hummed with tension as Jamal approached the engine. Cameras hovered like vultures hungry for a mistake. Investors leaned forward in their seats. Engineers crossed their arms, waiting for the moment he would embarrass himself and confirm what they already believed, that this was nothing more than an arrogant interruption by a man who didn't belong in their world. Jamal ignored them all. He ran his fingers gently along the cold metal casing of the machine, feeling every groove, every bolt, every plate. To everyone else, it was a complicated mess of parts and wires. To Jamal, it was a language, a story waiting to be understood. He bent down, pressing his ear closer as Alexandra's words echoed faintly in his memory. "Harmonic frequency? You expect me to believe that?" A faint vibration pulsed beneath the shell, uneven, disorganized, a rhythm trapped between two worlds. Then it hit him, not like a loud realization, but like a memory returning home. He stepped back and scanned the frame markings, scribbled numbers, faded fabrication stamps. His eyes narrowed as he read the faint etching on the internal components. "Manufactured in Stuttgart, Germany." His heart skipped that a few of the closest engineers noticed his change in posture. "What is he doing now?" one whispered. Jamal straightened slowly, his eyes lifting to a nearby engineer. "Where was this frame built?" The man scoffed. "Why does that matter? The software controls the performance." "Humor me." "Germany," he finally answered, "then shipped here to be integrated with our systems." Jamal nodded softly to himself. "And the programming basis?" "Imperial, American standard, same as always." There it was, the invisible battle no one had seen. Metric versus imperial. Millimeters versus inches. Two precise languages, speaking different truths, forced into the same body. The world of experts. The difference was microscopic, negligible, too small to matter. But to a machine that depended on perfect balance, that tiny misunderstanding had been a death sentence. "Nothing is wrong with your code," Jamal said quietly. more to the engine than the people. It's your translation that's broken. He didn't reach for an expensive computer, didn't pull up complex simulations, didn't call for a team of technicians. Instead, he walked toward his cleaning cart. A few people laughed out loud. Is he going to mop the engine now? Someone joked. Jamal knelt down and opened the small storage compartment he kept for personal items. Inside, between a cloth and a warm pair of gloves, was something he had carried for years. Not for a moment like this, but because he could never part with it, a tiny, homemade harmonic dampener, a simple, ring-shaped device wrapped in thin bands of rubber and metal. The final lesson his grandfather had taught him before he died. When things fight inside themselves, you don't silence one side. You find balance between them. He held it between his fingers for a moment, feeling the weight of memory settle in his palm. Then, without ceremony, he walked back to the engine. All this hype, an engineer scoffed. For a piece of scrap? Jamal didn't answer. He carefully placed the dampener along the conflicting vibration point, the precise intersection where metric steel met imperial programming. He adjusted 2 bolts, barely more than a quarter turn, balanced the barrier, let the machine breathe for the first time. The entire operation took less than 5 minutes. The room broke out in a full laughter. A billionaire investor shook his head. This is ridiculous. Alexandra folded her arms. Is that it? She asked, her voice edged between irritation and reluctant curiosity. Yes, ma'am. You've just risked your job, your reputation, and 2 hours of our time on that. Yes, ma'am. Her stare cut into him. Then let's end this performance. She nodded to the technician at the control panel. Turn it on. A hush crashed down on the room, so quickly it felt like time itself had paused. The switch was flipped. For a brief, terrifying second, nothing happened. Jamal closed his eyes. Then the engine stirred at a low, steady vibration rolled through the floor. Not chaotic, not violent, but smooth. Controlled, like a heartbeat settling into its natural rhythm. Viron, the sound grew stronger. Fuller. The machine that had choked, screamed, and shut down for 6 straight weeks was now purring. Perfectly. Smooth, balanced, alive. Every graph on the monitor straightened. Every error signal dissolved. Every red warning light switched to green. Mouse fell opened at a pin dropped to the floor with a sharp clatter. Someone near the back whispered, "That's impossible." Alexandra stepped forward, her face drained of color as she stared at the screen, then at the engine, then at him. "Run diagnostics," she snapped at a tech rush to comply, hands shaking, systems optimal. Stability confirmed. Performance flawless. Silence flooded the room like a wave. N-O laughter now. N-O whispers. Only the soft, steady hum of the once defeated machine. Then one person clapped, then another, then another. Applause exploded through the test bay, loud, unstoppable, echoing off steel walls and glass ceilings. Engineers who had mocked him stared with new eyes filled with awe, confusion, and something dangerously close to respect. Cameras zoomed in. Investors stood. Alexandra Reed, the woman who never applauded anyone, found her own hands moving without command. Jamal opened his eyes, and for the first time in that building, he was no longer invisible. The applause didn't fade. IT grew louder. IT swelled until it echoed off the metal beams above, until it shook the glass walls that just minutes ago had trapped Jamal in silence and doubt. The very people who had laughed, some of them still holding the phones they'd raised to mock him, now stood on their feet, clapping with hands that trembled. They weren't just applauding the engine. They were applauding him, the man they had erased from their world, the man they had never truly seen. Jamal stood there, frozen for a moment, as if his body hadn't yet caught up with reality. The soft purr of the engine settled into his chest, vibrated through his bones. It felt like a victory song, not for pride, but for justice, justice long delayed. Point one of the senior engineers, a man who had once walked past Jamal without so much as a nod, took a slow step forward. His eyes were filled with something new, something rare in rooms like this. Humility. "I don't even know how you saw that," he said quietly. "We checked everything. Every analysis, every variable." Jamal gave a soft shrug. "You check the numbers. I listened to the story." Another engineer followed, then another. until the group that once stood against him now surrounded him. Not as enemies, but as students try to understand a master. "You saved the entire project," one whispered. "Do you realize how much money you just brought back from the dead?" Jamal didn't answer. His eyes found Alexandra Reed standing a few feet away, the undefeatable CEO of Crimson Motors. She wasn't clapping anymore. She wasn't speaking either. She was simply staring, as if her brain was struggling to reconcile the man before her with the janitor she had humiliated in front of the world. Her confidence had vanished. In its place was something raw, heavy, uncomfortable, regret. The livestream view count on the screen behind her surged into the millions. Comments flooded in at a speed too fast to read. "Who is he? That janitor is a genius. Promote him now." "This is history." Investors gathered around Alexandra, speaking in urgent tones. "This changes everything," one said. "That engine is the future of our next generation. And he just unlocked it," another added. "He's a gold mine, Alexandra. A walking miracle." She nodded slowly, still staring at Jamal, still seeing the moment she'd turned him into a joke. At last, she stepped closer to him. Every breath he took felt louder than the engine now. "You're not a janitor," she said carefully, her voice no longer sharp, no longer mocking. "No, ma'am," Jamal replied. "I never really was." "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she asked. "Why did you accept being invisible?" He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had cleaned floors, wiped messes, repaired hope. "Because I learned a long time ago," he said quietly, "that some people only listen to titles, not truth." The words cut deeper than any insult ever could, that a heavy silence followed. Then Alexandra did something no one had ever seen her do. She turned to the entire room, to the investors, to the board members, to every camera still streaming. And she spoke. "Today, Crimson Motors owes its future, its very survival, to a man we ignored, a man we laughed at, a man I personally disrespected." Her voice wavered, just for a second, and "I am ashamed." No gasps, no whispers, just shock. "Effective immediately," she continued, raising her chin with newfound clarity. "Jamal Washington is hereby promoted to senior mechanical engineer of Crimson Motors." The room erupted again. "Additionally, he will serve as global project leader on our new engine development initiative, overseeing teams, directing innovation, and ensuring this company never again forgets where genius can be found." Jamal's breath caught in his throat. A senior executive quickly handed over a tablet, displaying an official document. Numbers glowed at the bottom of the screen: a six-figure salary, extended benefits, a leadership contract with his name in bold. He didn't reach for it right away. Not because he didn't want it, but because something in him needed to be sure this wasn't another joke. Alexandra met his eyes. "This isn't pity," she said. "This is justice and recognition." He gave a slow nod and finally accepted the tablet. The applause returned, even louder, as cameras pushed forward to capture his face. But Jamal didn't smile for them. He thought of his grandfather, of the cluttered garage, the smell of oil, the gentle voice that once told him, "One day, boy, the world will hear you. Make sure you speak with truth." And today, it finally had. Within the hour, headlines had already begun to fill the internet. "Janitor saves billion-dollar company. The man who listened to a machine. From invisible to indispensable." His name was everywhere. Yet the real transformation wasn't written in media clippings or digital screens at IT, was written in the way people now looked at him. With respect, with awe, with value. Still, there was one gaze that felt heavier than all the rest at Alexandra's. Later, that evening, long after the investors had left and the cameras had powered down, she found Jamal standing alone in the test bay. The great engine stood silent now, almost peaceful in its rest. "You embarrassingly proved a room full of experts wrong today," she said, walking beside him. "And you changed my company's future." He shrugged lightly. "The engine did most of that." "No," she replied softly. "You did." A moment passed before she spoke again. "I made a joke earlier," she said, "about marrying you." Jamal looked at her for the first time that evening. Not as a CEO, not as a judge, but simply as another human being, I remember, he said calmly. I wasn't serious, she admitted. I wanted power over you. I wanted to humiliate you in front of everyone. Her eyes dropped. And instead, you humbled me. She looked back up. I've led this company for years, thinking intelligence had a certain face, a certain background, a certain voice. Today, you proved how wrong I was. A beat of silence. Promotion isn't enough, she said. I owe you more than a title. I owe you my respect. And if you're willing to give me the chance someday, maybe even my apology in more than just words. Jamal studied her expression. No arrogance left. No games. Only honesty. I don't need revenge, he replied. And I don't need your guilt. Just make sure the next invisible person is heard before they have to prove their worth. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. I will. In that quiet moment, surrounded by steel and silence. Something far more powerful than a promotion had taken place, that a shift in the world, that a change in vision, and the rise of a man who had never truly been a janitor, only a genius waiting for the world to listen. 3 months changed everything. Crimson Motors was no longer the same cold, unforgiving tower of ego and titles. The board had acted swiftly after the live stream fallout and public pressure. Investigations were launched. Leadership was questioned. Values were rewritten, and Alexandra Reed, the once untouchable CEO, was demoted, not fired, not destroyed, just stripped of the throne she had ruled from without ever truly seeing the people below it. She stepped down into an advisory role, no longer the voice of authority, only another employee with something important to relearn. The company, however, did something even more powerful. They changed their culture. A new initiative was created overnight. The Hidden Potential Program, designed to identify overlooked talent from every level of the organization. Janitors, security guards, assistants, interns, anyone with passion, curiosity, or untapped ability was finally given a voice. Titles meant less. Talent meant more. Jamal Washington led the transformation with quiet strength. He didn't seek revenge. He built bridges. He created mentorship programs. He walked factory floors just as he once cleaned them, not to scrub, but to listen. And people spoke. Their ideas sparked innovations. Their perspectives solved problems no algorithm could touch. Under Jamal's leadership, new engine technology surged into production, efficient, powerful, and environmentally revolutionary. Across Europe, cities began to change. Cleaner transportation, smarter energy consumption, smoother systems powered by the same harmonic principles his grandfather taught him in a dusty little garage. Not just machines, but futures. One evening, as the sun dipped beneath the skyline and bathed the building in gold, Alexandra stood outside the test facility waiting for him. An entourage. No heels, no power suit, just a woman, nervous for the first time in her life. Jamal stepped out, surprised to see her there. I didn't come as your former CEO, she said quietly. I didn't come as your employee. I came as Alexandra, a person who owes another person the apology of a lifetime. He said nothing, just listened. I mocked you, she continued. I used you. I underestimated you. I made you feel small so I could feel in control. And in doing so, I revealed the ugliest part of myself. Her voice trembled. I am so deeply sorry. Silence lingered between them. Then Jamal took a gentle breath and nodded. Apology accepted, he said calmly. Because everyone deserves a second chance, even you. Tears filled her eyes. Not because of guilt, but because of grace. Later that night, Jamal returned to the test bay one last time. He placed his hand on the engine he had saved, the heart of a new world, and whispered, "We did it, Grandpa." In the hum of the metal, in the steady rhythm of balanced power, it almost felt like an answer came back. The man who once pushed a mop across silent floors now stood as a global innovator. The invisible had become the unforgettable, the ignored had become the essential, and the wisdom of an old mechanic now powered cities across nations. All because one man chose to listen, not to the world, but to the heartbeat no one else believed in. Sometimes the world overlooks diamonds just because they're covered in dust. Jamal was never just a janitor He was a genius the world refused to see, until he refused to stay silent at S.O. Ask yourself, how many Jamals are still being ignored? If this story touched your heart, share it, because the next person you walk past might be the one who saves the future. That don't judge a title. Respect the soul behind it.